What's up, guys? I wanted to show really quick today a little modification I made on one of my snowblowers that I've had around forever. And I'll show you specifically which snowblower this is, but this would also apply to anything similar where your axle bearings are failing. So let's get into it. I'll show you the component that was no good on mine. And what it is this axle bearing kind of hanger deal. It's actually just a bushing, not really a bearing, but this is completely plastic as far as I can tell, which basically means junk right off the bat. But what had happened, as you can see, mine split right through the middle here, and I had all kinds of slop in my axle. So that made it really hard to move this machine. You basically couldn't push it, and it was hard to even drive itself around. It would bog the engine down. It was trying so hard. So what I ended up doing is tried to look up by model number of this Craftsman, and I'll show you what the model number is. It's a Craftsman 536.918800. 536.918800. And one thing, Craftsman parts are hard to find in general, especially on older stuff, which this is. So there were no results as far as getting replacements. However, even if I could have gotten a replacement, I didn't want to put a plastic bearing back in this thing. So I'll show you what I ended up doing. What you see here, and I've got the tire on, so I'll try to zoom in away from that. What you see here is a pair of PF204. These are agricultural bearing flange kind of hanger deals. I got these at the local Baumgars store, but you can get these at your Tractor Supply or your Orscheln, anything like that that carries agricultural, maybe even your hardware store. But these are a 204 size, and that's standard between anything. They number them like 203, 204, 205, etc. And these are a 204. My axle was a 3/4 inch diameter, so what I have in the middle is a ball bearing, and that's a self-centering, non-greasable ball bearing, and that's what's meant for this particular hanger. So that's also a 204 bearing. And it comes with these two little locking hubs on each side. That's like a locking shaft collar. And what I did, try to explain this in order, but it's hard to show you without getting in here. I guess here's a good view. You can see I pulled my original bearing out, or bushing. Here's where those holes are at. And I tried once, I drilled some holes and those were off center, so ignore that. What I ended up doing is the hole for the hanger was the exact same size as the hole in the side of my snowblower frame already. So I lined that up. Unfortunately, it didn't sit inside of it. That would have been perfect. But it sat just the same diameter. So I lined that up and tack welded it in place. And then I drilled my 3 mounting holes, which are 5/16 holes for those 3 bolts you see. Then I ended up breaking the welds loose, and since it didn't sit down flush, I had to stack these 3 locking washers on each bolt to get those lined up. You can see my bottom bolt's a little bit off, but that's okay. So I stacked those 3 washers, slid the bearing and locking collar on to the axle, and then locked the 3 down. As you can see, my bolts are a little bit too long, so I'm going to cut those off. But these are just a 5/16 bolt with a flange nut and then the 3 lock washers to space it out. If you're working on this same machine, that's exactly how that'll go. And then what I did before locking these locking collars in place was I put the tires back on so that I could turn it. It's hard to just grip the axle and turn it without some leverage. I left those loose, and then I tapped the axle left and right until I got the chain centered. Where I had it before, the chain kind of bound up, and so I tapped it a little bit more. it loosened up a little bit, kept tapping it. And another thing I watched is for the sprocket to track in the center of the chain. And you can see there I'm still a little bit far to the right. I need to tap it just a little bit farther left so that our chain is tracking right in the center of our sprocket. But that's it. On your particular machine, I guess it's hard to say what you'll run into. This is the first one I've done like this. But if I ever run across one again, I plan to do the same thing. One thing I will say, if this would have been a 5/8 shaft instead of a 3/4, then you can step down to the next size of these hangers, which in this case is a PF203. See if we can focus on that. There you can see it. Or in other words, if you're looking at a Beco brand, that's the A. They go by letter, A, B, C, D. And that fits a 1/2 inch to an 11/16 bearing. And this particular flange fit perfectly down inside of my snowblower. So these would have been great, except the bearing was the wrong size. I needed a 3/4, or in other words, a 12/16. Reduce that down to 3/4, which this does not quite accommodate. So unfortunately, those didn't work. But if you have a smaller bearing or a smaller shaft enabling you to use a smaller bearing, that would definitely be the way to go. But I'm very happy with how this turned out. You can see it rolls very easily, just one finger. So this is going to be really nice, and those are going to hold up for a long time as opposed to the plastic junk that was on it to begin with. So if you're stuck on a similar situation to this, make sure to leave a comment down below, and I'll try to help you out as soon as possible. Otherwise, as always, like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.